Welcome to the Wellness for Women show, where we talk about life, weight loss, and everything in between. I'm Faye Caseman, founder of the AAA Way Life and Weight Loss Programme, and I'm here to help you put together the pieces of life and weight loss for one last time. This is an episode of the Wellness for Women show, filmed live in the free Facebook group. Hello, and welcome to episode number 92 of the Wellness for Women show, where I look to help you super sleuth your relationship with food, one bite and one belief at a time. And today I'm looking to help you to answer the question, does your conversations with others impact what you eat? So our lives, and especially social lives, are all very personal to us, the same as our food choices. How you communicate, how others communicate to you will be different and unique. But have you ever found yourself reaching for a snack after an argument? Or maybe you have procrastinated and reached for food to avoid a difficult conversation. Maybe you have been enjoying a delightful, flowing conversation only to realize that you've inhaled more food than you needed, or gone along with whatever your conversational partner has been eating to be social. And so we're going to explore that a little today in our touring together. And I'm going to run you through how the conversations we have could be a hidden influence in terms of swaying your eating habits. We'll look at a few real life scenarios and the impact to food choices. And of course, because we're all about actionable insights here, I will share some techniques to help you have delectable conversations without the overeats. And as usual, whether you are catching this live, replay, podcast, YouTube, or blog, your thoughts on the episode are welcome in the Wellness for Women Facebook group or membership. So let's crack on. So it's science, baby. It's science. So tell me in the comments, what have you noticed about your social interactions and how they impact your eating? Is there any go-to patterns that you are aware of? It may all seem coincidental, but actually it is psychology, hence why it's all science, baby. Our social interactions can have a potent effect on our eating behaviors. When we communicate with others, we're not just exchanging information, we're also experiencing a ton of emotions. These emotions then trigger responses in our brain, which then lead to us sometimes searching for comfort, for reward, or a sense of control through food. And emotional eating is ultimately a term that many of us are familiar with, or you will be if you're a listener to the show. But it's not just our internal dialogues that can influence this, though, of course, they are the biggest part. But these external conversations, the laughter, the arguments, the shared stories, they can all play a role. Because ultimately, they can then set off a cascade of neurotransmitters and hormones like cortisol and dopamine, all influencing our cravings and our food choices, as well as obviously knocking into our thought processes where we go through, but where ultimately the conversation is a situation which we then have a thought about stemming from our beliefs, leading to our emotions, leading to our actions or inactions, and onto our results. To give an example, you're at a family gathering, conversation turns into a debate, tensions rise, and before you know it, you're in the McDonald's drive-thru on the way home and you're snuffling a meal deal even though you weren't really hungry. The catalyst, the conversation, the situation that started that series of events, both internally and externally. Conversely, what about the last time you had a stressful day at work? Maybe you were heading to the shop on the way home thinking that chocolate was the only cure, but then a friend phones. And rather than heading to the shop, you're having a supportive discussion with your friend instead. You feel heard, you feel validated, and you get that much needed mood boost. And so that stress eating doesn't happen. So again, these conversations, they can all have, I always say, there's always positive, neutral, or negative effects. And so it's just about looking at those in a little bit more detail. So these are just two examples, and maybe on the face of it, it just seems like they're reactions, they're in the moment reactions to the situation you found yourself in. But this interplay between communication and eating isn't just about immediate reactions, it's also about patterns. Because over time, our beliefs have formed, your brain has associated certain types of interactions with food-related behaviors, creating habits that can feel sometimes damn challenging to break, right? But you can remove or you can change these beliefs, the behaviors and the habits, and you can remove the power that food ultimately has over you and break that connection. So stay tuned until later on, because ultimately the AAA way can help you to see this fascinating intertwining of your social life and your food choices. But I want to take a little moment just for now, just to look at some more real life situations that we can find ourselves in on a day-to-day basis, and just give you some reflection work about how you can approach these situations, what comes up for you or has come up for you in the past. So let's look at our joyful interactions. So just take a minute to think about what happens when you're having a happy conversation with people. Maybe you're celebrating something. Maybe you're catching up with someone you've not seen for a while. You're having a laugh and a joke with your work colleagues, or you're out for a nice meal with your partner. So just take some time to reflect on how your food choices and your eating habits are influenced by your joyful interactions. Do you find yourself indulging more in certain foods during these joyous occasions? How does the atmosphere of these interactions affect how much you eat? Is it more or less, or is it neutral, or it depends? Are you distracted eating? And so you're distracted with your chopsing, or you're laughing and maybe you don't eat at all. So does it make a difference to how you show up for yourself? Does it make a difference who you are with or who you're talking to? I'd encourage you to just think about those questions. And then now let's have a look at the other end of the scale. How do you show up when the poop hits the fan in a conversation? Difficult conversations, whether they're with a colleague, a partner, or even a stranger, can leave us feeling really drained and really anxious. And it would be common, I'd say, for us to turn to comfort food sometimes as a quick fix to soothe away those unsettling feelings that can come up. So again, just take a moment to reflect about a recent argument or a stressful meeting. Did you find yourself reaching for comfort snacks afterwards as a way to cope? How did you approach food if there is how do you approach food if there is a conversation or a task coming up that you don't want to do? And is there certain food that you tend to go to? And if so, why that food? Why that association? What does your brain think that that food item is going to give you, and why? Because all the answers are here, ultimately in our subconscious. And what I hope that you're taking away from this is a ripple effect we have in life, where small things can knock into others, and sometimes we don't even notice that it's happening. So what seems like just a conversation actually can be so much more. It's not just about the food though. How do you feel about that person that you're talking to after you've had a happy moment or a stressful moment? How long do those feelings last and ripple out? Do they ripple out further and start to impact other people or other things that you do? Because recognizing the ripple is key to understanding our food choices and the emotions that drive them, but also how we show up in the rest of our life. And so being mindful of these connections, you can start to identify patterns and importantly, then make choices that align with your health and well-being goals, even amidst the complexity that is life and your social interactions. And so understanding these dynamics is not about assigning blame or guilt, because we're here to ditch that diet drama, but about gaining insights into the subtle ways that your social environment influence your eating habits. And with this awareness, you're going to be then better equipped to navigate your food journey with more intention, more mindfulness, more consciousness. So now that we've had a little look and had a little bit of a think about how we show up about food in and around social interactions and joyful conversations and stressful conversations, and how that can all impact those food choices, how can you actually have healthy conversations? How can you minimize the impact certain conversations have on your relationship with food? So the first one I want to give you is a pause and reflect. So strategy one, pause and reflect. So before entering into a conversation or reaching for food, just create a pause. Ask yourself, how am I feeling? How am I feeling about the interaction I am about to have just had, or I am having? How do I feel about that person? And ultimately decide, how do you want to show up? And so if you're heading for food, ask yourself, am I eating in response to this interaction, or am I genuinely physically hungry, or am I just trying to feed an emotion? And there's a lot of power in that simple pause, and it creates that space that's then necessary to help you to choose your response rather than acting on impulse. There is definitely power in the pause. And strategy two is express, don't suppress. So, if a conversation is triggering an emotion response that is leading you to do something that may not be in line with who you want to be, whether that be shouting, eating, sulking, then just have a ponder about how you can express your feelings in a way that is more aligned with what you want. So, do you perhaps need to speak to a friend, scream into a pillow, take to your journal, or perhaps engage in a fun activity? Because if you address your emotions directly, you reduce the likelihood of then turning to food as an emotional comfort. Strategy 3, set some boundaries. So the more you know about yourself, the more you notice about others, the more you can assess what topics of conversation or social situations trigger your stress or emotional eating. So, looking to set boundaries around these to protect your well-being. So, do you need to communicate these boundaries with others? Are they boundaries that you need to lovingly set for yourself? So, again, always look to set boundaries with love, openness, and curiosity rather than trying to just give yourself good talking to or whipping yourself into shape. Because it's perfectly, all of these are perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay to seek to change the subject, to step away from a conversation, or to even decline an invitation to a conversation if that serves your health and happiness. And there is always ways and means of doing this without inviting extra drama. Strategy number 4, seek understanding. So often, when there is a difficult conversation, we can be so focused on our own perspectives that we don't actually stop and consider the other person. We can ultimately stop listening. They stop listening. This is when things can turn a little bit south and things can escalate. And so, in conversations that feel challenging, I would always encourage anybody that I speak to strive to understand the other person's perspective, because that can reduce conflict and also the emotional stress that then may lead to comfort eating. But understanding doesn't mean having to agree, but it could, in the same breath, lead to a different sense of empathy or connection. It can reduce negative emotional responses and ultimately can lead to de escalation. So it's always worth trying to see the other side of the coin. Strategy number 5, mindful eating practices. So when we're eating, especially in social situations, this is a perfect opportunity to practice any mindfulness that you have. So that can be about presence, it can be about thought work. There's so many different ways that you can use mindfulness. Mindfulness is broader than most of us realize. But one thing that you really can do is ultimately check in with your body cues. So be present with the food and yourself, as well as the person that you're speaking to. And so really it's just about being aware. And the more aware you are, the more you will notice differences, the more you can step into different actions and ultimately hold yourself accountable. And that works for the conversation that you're having as well as the food that you're eating. Strategy number 6, seek out positive interactions. So we are the sum of the 5 people closest to us, according to Jim Rohn. A phrase that often gets used, whether you believe that that's true or not, I think it's worth pause for thought. So, who are your life influencers? What type of interactions do you tend to be part of? Do you have more joy filled conversations or do you have more filled with drama? How do you feel about that? Is that something that you want to change? And if you are surrounded more by negative normers who bring you stress, maybe it's time to go out and seek other conversations or other people who can uplift you. And this is why I talk all the time about finding more joy, because more joy means a boost in your mood and reduces the likelihood of emotional eating. And so tell me in the chat, like I said, tell me in one of the Wellness for Women groups or on my public profile if you're watching this live, what do you think about these strategies? So do you have them all nailed down? Are these things that you already do? If so, that's great. Maybe share a tip with other people. If not, what is it that you want to try? Because this is ultimately all about finding your best way to have absolutely amazing conversations with others and yourself, but also doing something that's more uplifting to your soul and away from food if that's where you have a tendency to go. Okay, that's it, folks. So thank you for joining me today for a positive conversation and dialogue about all the dialogue that we have with other people and our food choices. And so it's a reminder, these internal and external conversations that we have can be key to our success. So let's just go through those key takeaways. So for me, that's about recognizing the power in communication. We've talked about how conversations, whether they're joyful, stressful, or comforting, can have a tangible impact on our eating. How awareness is key, recognizing that on a day-to-day basis, this can be our first step towards mindful eating, towards mindful communication with others. And by being aware how our conversations influence our food choices, you can then make decisions that align with your overall well-being rather than being swayed by those emotions. We covered off some practical strategies. So we've explored some actionable strategies about pausing and reflecting, setting boundaries, practicing mindful eating. These tools are ultimately all designed to help you to navigate those social and emotional situations without letting them dedicate your food journey. And as ever, like I said at the start, I would encourage you to reflect on this episode. Go back, listen to it again, take some notes, ask the questions that I posed to yourself and just see what comes up for you. And just have a look at the conversations that you're having this week. Observe how they're influencing your feelings and in turn your food choices. And maybe then try and apply some of the strategies that I've given you. Because ultimately each step that you take towards understanding you, your life, the more you can, again, improve that communication, the more you can make conscious life and food choices. And that ultimately all helps your wellness, right? So like I say, I'd love to hear your insights on it. If you are a member, this will obviously go live in your portal by the end of the weekend. And in terms of your gift this week, it is a challenge. It's a communication challenge. So watch out for that dropping. But until then, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, if you want to boost your life and weight loss the AAA way, check out the relevant links for today's show in the description. Speak soon.